Well, on behalf of co-director Lee and on my own behalf, I wish to thank all of you for taking the time to participate in this event this afternoon, presentation and demonstration on traditional Chinese medicine. I particularly note the presence of the Ambassador of China, the 5th Medical Team representatives, the Association of TCM Practitioners in Barbados, coordinated by Dr. Che Corbin. I also want to make special mention of some friends of mine, close friends of mine in the medical area from the Washington, D.C. area, Professor Olu Olusanya and Dr. Tony Harewood, Diagnostic Intervention Radiologist at Calvert Health in Prince Frederick County. Of course, at this point, I am going to introduce as the first item on our agenda, the opening remarks by our very own principal at the Cave Hill campus, Professor Clive Landis. And it is very significant, and we're very grateful that the principal has been able to join us this afternoon, because the principal is not only coming from a medical background, but he's a researcher in his own right. And from the time we mentioned this event to him, he appeared very excited and interested in participating. Professor Landis came to the Cave Hill campus in 2004. He has served as deputy principal, as University Pro Vice Chancellor for undergraduate studies and chair of the UWI-CH Task Force. He's also currently chair of the UWI COVID-19 Task Force, a role which he had since February 2020 when the pandemic came upon us. He has spent nearly 2 decades at the University of West Indies after coming to us from the Imperial College in London, where he took a post as a lecturer, senior lecturer in the George Allen Chronic Disease Research Center. And then he was made director of the center in 2013. He has published several papers, as you would expect of a man of this background and this caliber. Most recently, he is focused on HIV, as well as ZIKV and SARS-CoV. And he has published many papers with the analyzing the comparative effectiveness of the pandemic response by CARICOM. So without further ado, I will hand the floor over to Professor Landis to give us the opening remarks. Over to you, Professor Landis.
Thank you very much, David Bulbulia, acting as MC of this meeting. Ambassador of the People's Republic of China in Barbados, Mr. Yan Shusheng, Dr. Clyde Cave, Director of Medical Services of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Barbados, Dr. Shunxing Shang, please excuse my pronunciations if they're not quite right, Captain of the 5th Chinese Medical Team to Barbados, Dr. Ran Jun, Specialist in Agriculture of the Chongqing Traditional Chinese Medicine Hospital, other members of the 5th Chinese Medical Team to Barbados, Professor Winston Moore, Deputy Principal here at the Cave Hill campus, Dr. Damien Cohol, Senior Lecturer in Pharmacology and Deputy Dean, Program Director, he's Deputy Dean and Program Director, Faculty of Medical Sciences in Pharmacology, teachers at the Confucius Institute, friends of the Confucius Institute, Dr. Renyan Lee, Co-Director of the Confucius Institute, and finally, David Bulbulia. Ladies and gentlemen, it's certainly my pleasure to be able to deliver opening remarks and to participate in this presentation and demonstration on traditional Chinese medicine. I anticipate an exciting demonstration that will add to an extensive list of activities that the Confucius Institute of the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus, has presented over the years. Chinese opera, Tai Chi, Chinese cuisine, all in an effort to enhance understanding of Chinese culture. As some of you would be aware, TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, comes in various forms such as herbal medicine, acupuncture, moxibustion, cupping therapy, gua sha, massage, bone setter, exercise, and dietary therapy. So here in the Western Hemisphere, there is more awareness of some of these, like acupuncture and massage and dietary therapy, than others. TCM has a long and well-documented history in China. It has a very deep philosophical background in theories of qi, the circulating life force, whose existence and properties are the basis of much Chinese philosophy and medicine. Yin Yang, a concept of dualism in the natural world, in which opposite or contrary forces are seen as interconnected and complementary and interdependent. And Wuxing, five-fold conceptual scheme that is found throughout traditional Chinese thought, and microcosm-macrocosm analogies, which posit a structural similarity between the human being and the cosmos as a whole, revealing the unique outlooks on the nature, life, and humanity of Chinese people. The documentation of the Chinese materia medica, meaning the body of remedial substances used in the practice of medicine, dates back to around 1100 BC, and traces of therapeutic activities in China date from the Shang dynasty, even earlier, that's 14th to 11th centuries BCE. Since the 1950s, the Chinese government has promoted a more systematized form of traditional Chinese medicine. In the Caribbean, where we have a history of herbal and traditional remedies, a similarly systematic approach is recommended to assist research on traditional cures to help identify active ingredients and increase their effectiveness. When cultural knowledge of herbal medicines is linked with modern science, the results can be quite profound and transformational. This is illustrated in the Caribbean by the common periwinkle plant, Vinca rosea, that in Jamaican folklore had been associated with anti-cancer properties. When the active ingredient was isolated by a visiting Canadian scholar, the result was the discovery of vincristine that now constitutes the cornerstone of modern cancer therapy. And in my own humble research, I noted in an article published in Current Pharmaceutical Design in 2018 that Chinese traditional medicine remedies, such as ginseng, which is Panax ginseng, green tea, which is Camellia sinensis, and goji berries, Lycium barbarum, contained natural agonists of a cytoprotective pathway, NRF2 HER1, that mediates kidney protection in diabetes. You know, I will have to tell you, I was inspired to write this article after I visited China in 2016, and I was researching about Lycium barbarum, goji berries, and I felt that this might be connected to renal protection in diabetes. So without mentioning anything, I would speak to people who I met in China, really anyone who I met, not just medical experts. And I would say, what is goji berry good for? And they would all say, it's good for the kidneys. And this really set me on the path to write this article, because I felt here is a remedy that is recognized to protect kidneys. And in my own research, I was thinking what the pathway might be. And so I wrote this paper and it was published. Here at the Cave Hill campus, we are pleased that the Confucius Institute was successful in connecting the Faculty of Medical Sciences with the 4th Chinese medical team in Barbados. And from that connection, discussions started on a Memorandum of Understanding on Cooperation. The MOU was developed between both universities and signed by the then principal of the Cave Hill campus, Professor the Most Honorable V. Udine Barito, on February the 6th, 2020, and by Professor Ailong Huang, President Chongqing Medical University, CQMU, on May the 8th, 2020. With the signing of the MOU, cooperation between the two universities can take place as circumstances permit. With this in mind, the Confucius Institute hosted a meeting between the 4th Chinese medical team from Chongqing Medical University and representatives of the Faculty of Medical Sciences on December the 4th, 2020. Plans were made to continue the dialogue with the 5th team in the hope that cooperation activities under the MOU could be started, even remotely, as soon as practicable. These discussions have led to the provision of a list of possible collaborative programs for further review by the FMS, which has also provided its point of contact in Dr. Kenneth Connell, Deputy Dean of Internationalization and Recruitment. The COVID-19 exigency has unfortunately meant that clinical teams in the FMS have needed to be diverted from their normal commitments to assist in managing the COVID-19 surges on the island. Hence, it has become necessary to defer activities under the MOU on cooperation between the KFIL campus and the CKMU until a controllable baseline of COVID-19 is reached. The hosting of this presentation and demonstration on TCM points the way towards the start of collaboration, and I certainly hope that the cooperation envisaged in the MOU will become a reality in the near future. I know that the Confucius Institute stands ready to facilitate such consultations as needed. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Principal, for those opening remarks. And also thank you very much for your own personal insights into traditional Chinese medicine. I might add to that by saying that I was given a package of goji berries several years ago by the commercial counselor at the Embassy of China. He's now left Barbados. And at that point in time, he recommended that I soak them in wine or some other form of alcohol. I'm not sure if the good effects will be negated by that. I am yet to try that.
I think it'll be enhanced.
Wonderful. Okay, so you might get a new breakthrough in discovery, in moderation. But thank you very much, Principal, for your opening remarks. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to the Ambassador, His Excellency Yan Zhusheng, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China in Barbados, to give some remarks. Before saying that, I'd like to before giving the floor to him, I'd like to say that the Ambassador and his embassy has stood with us, Principal, in support of the Confucius Institute.
I also in Zoom thing dealing with Chinese medicine.
Somebody is coming. Could you mute your microphone, please? Other persons? Yes, I was saying the ambassador and his staff at the Embassy of the People's Republic of China have stood with the Confucius Institute from the very outset, but I would say particularly during the past difficult years, difficult months when we've dealt with COVID. We are very grateful for the support that they have been providing in many, many ways. Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you through you, Ambassador, to your staff at the embassy. Now over to you, Ambassador Yan Zhusheng.
Thank you, David. Principal Professor Ladis Clives, West Indies University, Cave Hill campus. Dr. Clyde Cave, Director of Medical Services, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Dr. Domain Cahol, PhD, Senior Lecturer in Pharmacology, Deputy Dean, Program Director, PhD, Faculty Medical Services, Sciences. Dr. Zhang Qunxia, of the 5th Chinese medical team to Barbados. Mr. David Babulia, co-director of the Confucius Institute. Dr. Li Renyan, co-director of the Confucius Institute. Dear teachers at the Confucius Institute, dear friends, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to participate in today's event with the theme of traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM. As you may know, traditional Chinese medicine is a part of the traditional culture of China, enjoys a time-honored history. At the essence of China, it is the enrichment of 5,000 years of splendid Chinese culture. It is formed by thousands of hardworking and brave Chinese fighting against disease and constantly gaining experiences during their practices. And such is the summary of the medical treatment theory and practical experience of the scientific system. The presentation of Professor Ladis Clives just now gave me another vivid description of the traditional Chinese medicine from the view of a foreign friend. Thank you very much for your introduction. Traditional Chinese medicine has won the respect and praise of the world for its magical effects. More and more people now realized the unique effect of traditional Chinese medicine and have begun to study traditional Chinese medicine theories. They are using the methodology of discover the natural medicinal herbs in their backyards, woods, forests, etc., and are able to use the theories and practices of TCM to cure people and bring health and happiness to the people living in their respective lands. I am so happy to know here in Barbados, outstanding scholars like Principal Ladis Clives and Dr. Derming Cahor have stepped ahead and published articles in this field. I'd like to express my sincere congratulations on the founding of the Barbados Association of Traditional Chinese Medicine and Acupuncture, that is TCMA, as practitioners and as the organization. You have done a great job, and I hope your union would continue to assist more people with their healing. As we speak, the world is experiencing the combined impact of major changes and the pandemic, both unseen in a century. His Excellency Xi Jinping, President of the People's Republic of China, pointed out that only solidarity and cooperation of the international community are the most powerful weapons to defeat the COVID-19. Since the start of COVID-19, China has provided to the international community some 350 billion masks, over 4 billion protective suits, testing kits, and over 1.6 vaccines. China has actively promoted international cooperation against the pandemic. and supported waiving intellectual property rights or vaccines for developing countries. These are the concrete actions China has taken to honor commitments and fulfill responsibilities. In the fight against the COVID-19, the traditional Chinese medicine has played a very important role in the prevention and treatment of the disease. It proved again it is effective and useful in the fight against the pandemic nowadays. I'd like to say today's event is of special significance to the fight against the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has made people all over the world realize that only joining hands can we defeat the pandemic together. As Prime Minister Miyamoto said, no one is safe until everyone is safe. Only by unity and solidarity in our humanity can the common enemy of all mankind be defeated. China is willing to share with the world our best medical skills. My dear friends, both Barbadian and Chinese people are very perseverant and industrious. Let us work together. The day of victory over the pandemic will soon be coming. Thank you again for Confucius Institute and the 5th Chinese medical team in Barbados to co-host this event. And I sincerely hope this event successful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for those remarks. And again, thank you for the continuing support of the embassy, and be assured that we will continue to work with the medical teams as they come to Barbados. This is not the first time we have had an activity with the medical team. We have continued to work with them as they have come to Barbados, and we will continue to do so. Thank you very much for your remarks. So I would like now to, first of all, recognize the presence of Dean Ochieng Odiambo, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, where the Confucius Institute is located in the university structure. And moving along, I would like to now give the floor to the captain of the 5th China Medical Team to Barbados, Dr. Zhang Unjia, to give remarks. Over to you, Dr. Zhang.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barbadian. Good afternoon, Ambassador Yan. Good afternoon, Professor Nandis, and our dear friends. Welcome to join the presentation and the demonstration of the traditional Chinese medicine. My name is Zhang Qunxia, and specializing in ultrasound, and I'm the captain of the 5th China Medical Team. It's my great honor to have this opportunity to introduce our team to all of you. Our team comprises 9 members, including a cardiologist, a vascular surgeon, and an acupuncturist, an orthopedic surgeon, an ultrasound physician, an anesthesiologist, an operating room nurse, a neonatal nurse, and a chef. And our team arrived in Barbados around Christmas time last year. Since then, we offer various specialties to UWI-CH. We do our best to provide the healthcare service to local people, and also we have been cooperating with our clinicals to fight against the COVID-19 and to establish new diagnostic and therapeutic practice at the hospital, such as the treatment of the osteoarthritis based on the integration of traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine. Barbados is a very beautiful country, and we like the beaches, we like the turtles, and we like plants. And also, the people in Barbados are very friendly, warm, and helpful. So we make a lot of friends here. And all of us really enjoying the working and living in Barbados. I believe that this year's appearance must be good memory for all of us. So next, I'd like to invite our team members to introduce themselves to all of you. So first, Dr. Dan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Ran. I'm an acupuncturist. And next, I'm going to share the presentation and demonstration later. So see you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Daniel. You can call me Danielle. I'm an anesthetist. I have worked in Department of Anesthesiology in UWI-CH for several months. According to my understanding, I believe that most Barbadians are really interested in TCM. So I hope that from today's presentation and demonstration, you can know more about TCM, and when necessary, turn to it. Thank you. Mrs. Zhong.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Zoe. I'm an operating theater nurse. Very happy to be here with you to nurse TCM culture together. I believe that we will have a very fantastic afternoon. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Liu Hong from the Department of Vascular Surgery of the first affiliated hospital of Chongqing Medical University. Very happy to participate in this conference.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny Dai. I'm the neonatal nurse. Wish everyone and me enjoy the afternoon. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sunlight. I'm a cardiologist. And I think I'm really looking forward for the presentation, especially the Guqin part, because in fact, I really don't know what it really is. So I hope you enjoy it too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Li from orthopedic surgeon. And I hope that this course will give you guys the new reason, the new view of the TCM in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to the captain of the 5th Chinese medical team in Barbados. We've also covered the introduction of the 5th China medical team, and now we can move on. Having completed part 1 of our program, we can move on to part 2, where the first item is TCM response to COVID-19 pandemic by Professor Ren Yi, expert from the Chongqing Traditional Chinese Medicine Hospital. Over to you, Professor Ren. Over to you, Professor.
Leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ren Yi from China.
Share screen.
共享。还有推出从开始啊。
I should add that the professor is connecting from China, and it's 3:31 in the morning, Saturday morning.
Oh, So there's some problem with the internet. So Dr. will lay out and say again.
Okay.
So wait a moment.
Okay.
Record.
Good now. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ren Yi from China. Both of Dr. Ruan and me come from Chongqing Traditional Chinese Medicine Hospital. Congratulations on the successful opening of the Caribbean Chinese Medicine Culture Festival. I'm very glad to take part in communication with you today. My topic is about prevention and treatment of COVID-19 with traditional Chinese medicine. I will report to you in the following 4 aspects. The COVID-19 belongs to plague in TCM with common clinical manifestations like fever, cough, fatigue, diarrhea, etc. The TCM treatment program of COVID-19 includes a medical observation period and a medical treatment period in China. If the patient appears fatigued with gastrointestinal uncomfortable and other clinical manifestations, Chinese patent medicine Hoxiang Zhenqi oral liquid is recommended for patients. These are 10 images of COVID-19 patients in isolation wards. These patients are suitable for taking Hoxiang Zhenqi oral liquid. If the patient is fatigued with fever and other clinical manifestations, Chinese patent medicine Lianhua Qingwen capsule is recommended for patients. Qunfei Paidu decoction, a special prescription for special disease, is recommended for patients in medical treatment period in China. It is suitable for mild, moderate, and severe cases. It consists of 21 kinds of Chinese herbal medicine. This treatment period also includes TCM syndrome differentiation. I will not do much reporting for you. No enough time today. COVID-19 was treated with combination of traditional Chinese and Western medicine in Chongqing. The way highlights medical advantages. Up to May 12, 2021, there were 533 confirmed cases treated by TCM in Chongqing, with a TCM treatment rate of 91.36%. 528 patients were cured and discharged, and 191 discharged patients were given TCM rehabilitation intervention. 3 TCM preparations for COVID-19 were developed. Traditional Chinese medicine also has a number of ways to prevent COVID-19. 4 TCM prevention methods as follows. The first is a decoction of traditional Chinese medicine. This is a prevention prescription of the Chongqing protocol. It consists of 9 kinds of Chinese herbal medicine. The second treatment is moxibustion therapy. Moxibustion therapy is to use the ignited moxers stick to hang on the selected acupoints or pain parts. It is an operation with through warming and medicinal effort to stimulate the acupoints or pain parts to improve immunity and prevent diseases. Commonly used moxibustion acupoints for COVID-19 prevention includes 足三里、神阙、关元 and 气海. The third treatment is acupoint sticking therapy. Acupoint sticking therapy is to make a certain dosage form of Chinese medicine and apply it to human acupoints. It can strengthen the body by stimulating the acupoints. Commonly used acupoints for COVID-19 patients in rehabilitation period are 肾腧、定揣、膻中 acupoint. The fourth method is 八段锦. It's a kind of traditional Chinese medicine aerobics. It can relieve symptoms, increasing exercise endurance, improve quality of life, and adjust the bad mood. Next, I will report to you. Kenya, Syria, Sudan. An epidemic coverage includes both China and foreign countries. An epidemic footprint is from Asia to Africa. The first area is Zhejiang in Chongqing on January 21, 2020. The first case in Southeast Chongqing was diagnosed. After early treatment, the patient was not improved, and the symptom of disappeared and could not walk down. After arriving in Zhejiang area, we went into the isolation world. This is me in the isolation world. This is a chest CT and the tongue images of this severe patient. We treated him with a decoction of Chinese medicine. The first nucleic acid test negative on January 29. The second nucleic acid test negative on January 31. And the first case in Southeast Chongqing and the second case in the city, the patient was cured and discharged on February 1st. The cure of this severe case benefited from the participation of traditional Chinese medicine. And the close cooperation between Chinese and Western medicine played a key role in reversing the disease. The second area is Wanzhou in Chongqing. And Wanzhou, Three Gorges Center Hospital. I regularly entered the critical case isolation world, used the TCM combinated Western medicine treating severe and critical patients with COVID-19, and achieved good results. The third area is Algeria and Sudan in Africa. We were in Africa. We spent a month helping anti-epidemic in Africa. 143 activities were held. 23 medical institutions were visited. We went into Africa isolation world 15 times. 56 meetings were held. The medical team conducted 8 high-level bilateral exchanges with the foreign parties, including the Ministry of Health of Algeria, National Science Council of Algeria, Ministry of Health of Sudan, Supreme Council for Health Emergency of Sudan, etc. We went to 10 hospitals in Africa for COVID-19 patients. This is me in the isolation ward for treating COVID-19 patients. This is my prescription and information for treating COVID-19 patients in Africa. In addition to assistance with COVID-19 diagnosis and treatment, the purpose of our going abroad also include to serve the overseas Chinese of both countries. We held the on-site health training and coaching meeting in Chinese enterprises. Our main work is to guide enterprises in epidemic prevention and control, such as training in personal protection, first aid treatment, traditional Chinese medicine, and so on. Nearly 500 Chinese enterprises, online and offline, were got the training. In total, 3,500 employees. These things are that we served embassies, peacekeeping forces, international students, etc. Our efforts have been recognized and thanked by the government, embassies, and patients. These pictures is that we take photographs with Prime Minister Hamdok and the Prime Minister's office in Sudan. These pictures are letters of thanks from the embassy and the patient.
Okay.
Thank you very much to Professor Ren Yi, expert from Chongqing Traditional Chinese Medicine University, Medicine Hospital. And I would like to now give the floor to the Chinese acupuncture expert here with the 5th Medical Team, Dr. Ran Jun. And he will speak on Chinese acupuncture from Antiquity to Modernity. Over to you, Dr. Ran Jun.
Thanks.我这个怎么显示没有这样会用？软件，快点软件，返回。
看看。来这。 Recording.
在共享。看到了 ，yes。声音你我这没办法控制。Good afternoon, all the guests. Okay. Can you hear me?
Afternoon. Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay. I'm Dr. Ryan, the Chinese medical doctor from the 5th China medical team to Barbados. It's a great pleasure to join you in this activity today. Nowadays, more and more people around the world are turning to acupuncture. Today, the title of my lecture is Chinese Acupuncture from Antiquity to Modernity. I would like to share with you the overview of the acupuncture. The lecture is divided into 4 parts: Chinese acupuncture in antiquity and in modernity, principle and mechanism of acupuncture, clinical application of acupuncture. At present, the earliest book that systematically recorded the theory of meridians was Foot Arm 11 Max Bastian Classic, which was discovered at the hand tool in Ma Wangdui, Changsha in 1972. It's shown that this as earlier as 168 BC, the theory of meridian has formed a relatively complete theory. Through the development of stone needle and bone needles, the formation of the bone needle, clinical techniques of acupuncture were gradually perfect. From this picture, you can see all kinds of needle were developed for various diseases. The picture above shows the ancient line needles. We can see the different needles have the different shapes, size, and ages. It's suitable for different kinds of diseases. The right picture shows the 12 meridians. According to the World Health Organization, 113 member states have approved the use the acupuncture, 29 of which have established relevant law and regulations, and 20 have included acupuncture in their health insurance systems. In this picture, you can see acupuncture was inscribed in 2010 on the representatives list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. In our mind, if we want to protect our acupuncture, we should show the amazing clinical benefit from acupuncture. With the rapid development of modern medicine, at the present time, a lot of top scientific research still revolve around acupuncture, such as Natural Science and Annual of the Internal Medicine magazines. The cover article on the right is one of my tutor published about the acupuncture treatment of asthma in Science magazine 2 years ago. Unfortunately, despite decades of modern research, how acupuncture works remain unclear. Although many people had put forward many hypotheses about the mechanism of the acupuncture, such like the neural late, the fluid late, the fibro late. But so far, no one has been able to fully explain acupuncture. Because of this, the use of the acupuncture has been greatly limited. Some people even say that acupuncture is something about thousands of years ago. We can't see the acupoint and touch it. What can it do? From this picture, you can see a lot of people, they are receiving the acupuncture. But still, we have the question, have you ever tried acupuncture? How do you feel about acupuncture? Does acupuncture works? All this question, some of you may not have experienced acupuncture before. Let's have a look how in our book, The Inner Canon of Huangdi, it describes the efficacy of the acupuncture. In this book, 夫善用针者，取其极也，由拔刺也，有血污也，有解结也，有绝壁也。That is mean a man who can use a needle can cure a disease as he pulls out a thorn, as he washes a stain, as he unknot a knot, as he unclog a blockage. From here, you can see the people who can use acupuncture, the effect is very quick as cleaning. The acupuncture works by balance yin and yang. But here is the question, what is the yin and yang? Yin and yang are invisible to us, but there are many manifestations of imbalance in our body, such as high and lower shoulders, long legs and short legs. You can see it. That is the yin and yang imbalance. Since the effect of acupuncture is so good, what are indications of the acupuncture? In this PowerPoint, you can see, just like the cervical spondylosis, lumbar vertebrae disease, all the ball joint disease with the painful problem, and including the respiratory system, digestive system, urinary system, reproductive system. All of this problem can be solved by acupuncture. For the sake of the time, I will show you a short video from my patient's post-treatment.
Having all of us, that allows me to up into the acupuncture, you know. My body felt a lot better than it did those 20 years. So I'm really thankful that happy that I came for that and took the acupuncture. Yeah. Can you introduce your pastoral history of the problem? My name is Colin King, and he has lower back issues, like sometimes like for 5 years now. And you know, the pain had gotten so severe that it came every day, you know, it's very painful and stuff like that. You know. Every position I got into was pain, so like, you know, sleep at night was pain, you know, a lot of medication, nothing.
Pain is so much better now. I give it thanks. I can walk properly now, so I was anyone else to take it and it will help us with it. I've been suffering with neurological is a very painful chronic pain. Standing doctors on that time. I know I have met Dr. Ryan. Dr. Ryan. And I am believing that they will go and I will not come back. I have that much confidence and faith in him. Because since then, I'm having a little bit because when I don't take medication, I don't have the pain like how it would when I don't take medication before. The pain will come back rapid. But I find out since he has some doses, I find that the pain is not really there because I'm not getting medication. It's very cycle because it's a very, very painful process. And the doctors even told me that they call it mad suicide disease. There are people that can't cope with it, but they're not suiciding themselves.
This patient, her name is Alita. She was suffering from the leg joint problem. The doctor referred him to take a leg joint replacement surgery. But after the acupuncture, she was recovered from it, and now she can have a normal life and walking. So from this short video, we can see all of these patients can benefit from the acupuncture. And you can see we resolve the pain of patient in a very short period of time. A lot of my patients, just after 2 or 3 treatments, their problem was disappeared. This is the characteristics of the TCM. We use the 4 words to describe it. The simpleness. That is mean it's very simple for operating the acupuncture. Convenience. That is mean we can do acupuncture anywhere without any equipment, just a few needles, and the effectiveness. That is mean it's very effective. The last one is cheap. You know, the cost of the needle is recording in progress. Yeah. So as a kind of a green therapy, acupuncture with no side effect has a very broad market prospect. That's all. I hope in the future, you can have a try of acupuncture. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ran Jun of the 5th China Medical Team, specialist in acupuncture, for that very interesting presentation. And I know this afternoon you participants came here to hear about traditional Chinese medicine, and you are hearing about that. But we also have a special component for you, as the principal mentioned at the beginning of his presentation. There is a memorandum of understanding between the Keifel campus and the Chongqing Medical University. And within the Keifel campus, the main branch, so to speak, the main responsibility for implementation on our side rests with the Faculty of Medical Sciences. And within that faculty, they have Dr. Damien Kohal. He is a deputy dean in the faculty, and he is also an expert in matters relating to the traditional Caribbean remedies. And this afternoon, he will give a presentation on medicinal plants of Barbados, backyard bushes, healing herbs, and their benefits. So in addition to the Chinese side, we're getting a bit of the Barbadian/Caribbean side. Over to you, Dr. Damien Kohal.
Thank you for that introduction, David. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here at this very important function, which highlights the collaboration and cooperation, not only between Barbados and China, but also between the University of the West Indies, specifically the Faculty of Medical Sciences. And as the principal spoke earlier, and David reminded us that we do have a very important cooperation between the University of the West Indies, the Faculty of Medical Sciences in particular, and the Chongqing Medical University. So I have a limited time, so I'm just going to jump into my presentation where I will be addressing the use of traditional healing approaches, but from this side of the globe. I think I've shared it. Okay, so perfect, share. And let me minimize this screen here. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen at the moment. Could you confirm if you're seeing my title slide? Yes, I can only assume so. Perfect, excellent. Right, so the name of my talk, and it's going to be a quick talk, and feel free, I'll share my email address after, just in case anyone wants to reach out to me if I may have glanced over any information a bit too fast. But the title is Medicinal Plants of Barbados, Backyard Bushes, Healing Herbs and Their Benefits. And it's interesting that, you know, we are able to share some of these traditional approaches, which are quite similar to what has been presented prior under the heading of traditional Chinese medicine. My presentation is going to go through these various segments, and I may not emphasize specific slides because it may speak to more detail than what is required for this presentation. But nevertheless, I hope to keep you guys quite keen and engaged throughout these various components of the talk. I will be using some specific terminology. This is just an opportunity for me to share what I mean by the use of these terms throughout the talk. Bioactive speaks to, I'm going to use it in particular when I'm addressing compounds from plants which have been shown to have activity, which can essentially elicit a response at the cellular level. Decoction is used in reference to boiling of plant-based material. Drugs, as we know them, are substances that are characterized that can effect physiological changes. Efficacy is a fancy E word, but it's could be interchanged with effectiveness or the ability of a drug or substance or medicine to bring about an effect. Infusion is quite the opposite of decoction, but when you infuse plant material, you basically boil your water and then you add your boiled water on top of the plant material as opposed to boiling the plant material. And medicine, everyone knows about medicine. We have been talking about medicine and pharmacology, which is my discipline, being a pharmacologist. I study the effects of substances on living systems. And phytochemical are wonderful compounds from plants, which are quite useful in producing health-based properties. And we say that these phytochemicals are secondary metabolites from plants, and these are the compounds from plants that interact with the biotic system of the world, right? Unlike the primary metabolites, which are known to be quite effective for the growth and development of plants. So when we speak about traditional healing practices in the Caribbean, especially here in Barbados, most of these approaches are embedded within the use of plants. And we use words such as herbal remedies, but you know, for opportunities like this, I like to just share you know, with you that herbs themselves are just potentially one of 4 types of plants that we have within our ecosystem. We have herbs, we have shrubs, we have trees, and we have climbers. But ever so often, the use of the word herb is is used generally to speak to plants, especially medicinal plants. You know, before molecular biology was involved in the use of classification of plants, it was said that we had about 300 plant families. However, with the use of molecular biology, we know that we have now been able to increase our understanding of the differences, which allow us to classify and have a deeper classification of plants. And we now have up to 500 plant families being established. So what are some of the historical and current trends on the use of medicinal plants? Well, I like to tell people that plants, you know, is essentially the mother of all medicine, because the first medicine that were created were herbal remedies. And back then, when we didn't understand how these substances from the plant or the chemicals from the plant affect biological changes at the cellular level and the tissue level, you know, we call it magic. And unfortunately, some persons weren't able to maintain their lives because they were considered to be magicians or sorcerers, right? But the use of plants as medicine is considered a very important precursor to what we consider now as modern and westernized medicine. It is said that just about 65% of the world population use plants for medicinal purposes. And if we're talking about populations not on this side of the hemisphere, but looking at the use of traditional Chinese medicine in China, the use of Ayurveda in India and other parts of the world, you can see how it's quite possible that 65% of the world population may still be quite keen on the use of plant-based medicine as their primary source of medical intervention. The Caribbean has a rich base for the practice of medicinal plants, and this was really due to our ancestors. So before the Europeans and our African brothers and sisters who were enslaved were brought to the Caribbean, we had the Amerindians, and the Amerindians themselves were quite, you know, major users of plants. Our Africans were brought throughout the time of slavery from West Africa. They used traditional approaches with the use of plants. And after the abolishment of slavery, we had the migration of indentured laborers from China, India, and they also brought their practices in the Caribbean as well. So in the Caribbean, we have a mixture of different practices which are stemmed from different ancestral practices. And this is a very nice time scale of what I may have described earlier. So as you can see, the earliest evidence of the use of plants dates about 3000 BC, which is about 5,000 years. And herbal remedies were essentially considered magical potions. And the reason for that is because, you know, we didn't have the advancements in the sciences, in chemistry, you know, in the biomedical sciences, which would have allowed us to explain how plants were able to bring about these effects. But we note that in the 19th century and thereafter, with the advent of natural sciences and applied sciences and disciplines such as mind pharmacology, we are fully aware of how plants have become, you know, important precursors to medicines. And Principal Landis cited that quite nicely with the use of the vinca alkaloids from the vincristine plant. This is what you would have observed in Europe in the 16th century. This is an apothecary. This is the ancient day pharmacist. I'm quite sure within Chinese history and culture that there may have been similar enterprises like this. But in such an enterprise, you would find the physician going into the apothecary and interacting with the herbalist or the pharmacist, who will be able to create the medicine and pass it on to the physician, who will be treating the patient elsewhere. So this itself could be considered the start of what we now consider conventional practices with development of pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies that make drugs and dispense them. So as pointed out, the use of medicinal plants in the Caribbean, of course, would have been derived primarily from our ancestral influences. But we also know that religion played a role in our current practices, because there are certain religious practices which utilize plants, right? And within some of these religious practices, from a cultural standpoint, there's an acceptance that these plants are not only healers of the spirit, but also can bring about physical manifestation of healing as well. The disease profile, especially in the Caribbean during the time of slavery, and being also a tropical climate, we basically were a hotbed for tropical diseases that came from West Africa. So whatever infectious conditions or pathogens that were in West Africa, we essentially had the same conditions in the Caribbean. So we're talking about yellow fever, typhoid, etc. But we also know that education, which was a major part of the deculturalization that occurred during the time of slavery, where slaves were prohibited from practicing their own culture, their heritage, and were forced to take on this westernized paradigm, that during that period, that itself affected the retention of knowledge, cultural and important historical knowledge by our ancestors. And of course, socioeconomic factors which still continue to impact how we embrace these Asian traditional practices. So what do we know now about the use of plants in Barbados? Well, we know that there are just about 650 to 700 species of flowering plants. 2 of them are considered endemic. And Professor Sean Carrington, who is now retired, now emeritus professor, would have done some marvelous work on this and published that some time ago. My works and other works locally have shown that just about 33% of the local population here in Barbados use plants. And we also know that among the users of herbs, more are females. 60% of users of herbs are female. And that ties in nicely because women have always had that very important caregiver role within families. So this is quite consistent with what is actually published outside of the Caribbean. And I generated some work before, and this is now, and this could now be updated because most of the plants that we do have in Barbados are actually tested using in vitro tests and mechanisms, and also preclinical studies, which shows that the bioactivity of the plant, as reported folklore, are quite consistent. This was some work that I published recently, just recent as this month, well, last month, October, the end of last month, where I actually looked at, the knowledge, attitudes, practices on the use of botanical medicines in rural Caribbean territory, because there was a sense that while the use of herbs in Barbados is considered low when you compare that to worldwide usage, as I presented earlier, 33%, that the use of herbs in the rural setting in Barbados was significantly more. And what we found within a very rural area in St. John was a total of 29 medicinal applications cited across 69 different plant species and 39 plant families, which speaks to the immense knowledge and depth of the practice still within rural Barbados compared to urbanized areas and cities, right across the island. And some of the popular herbs, of course, was Pimenta racemosa. That might seem like a very long scientific name, but that is your traditional bay leaf, right? You have Mordica charantia. A lot of persons might be more familiar with that, but that is your Circe, right? And then you have Zingiber officinale, which is your ginger. And just to tie this in quite nicely, that our use of ginger really ties in more so with indentured laborers that came from China. So the use of China within our, not only as a medicine or medicinal plant, but also within our culinary expeditions in food, diet, is really derived from, Chinese culture. But just to switch gear a little bit back and just to highlight some of these conditions that I mentioned earlier, which would have plagued the Caribbean, which would have essentially led to the proliferation of plants and our natural biodiversity in the use of plants to treat conditions, we could just focus on this slide. So during slavery between the 17th to the 19th century, these were all diseases that impacted Barbados: smallpox, colon influenza, pneumonia, tuberculosis, typhoid, yellow fever, and malaria, right? And of course, parasitic worm infections. Non-communicable conditions were not something that was of severe consequence to our ancestors during the time of slavery. They primarily suffered from vitamin deficiencies and protein, energy, malnutrition, right? But most of the conditions that they were indeed inflicted with were infectious conditions. And this essentially led to a significant use of plants, which were known to produce anti-infective effects. So when I give you just a sample of some of the plants that are used, you're going to see quite a rich list of plants used primarily for infectious conditions. In Barbados, they have coined a term for some plants. We call them cooling plants, or we make teas from those plants, and we call those teas cooling teas of Barbados, right? And there are two contexts out there as it relates to cooling, because cooling was also considered to be quite useful to calm irritable children down, that cooling, calming effect, and to give the child or the infant bush tea, like bay leaf, right? But cooling itself could have spoken to the antipyrectic or the anti-fever or the body temperature lowering effect of some of these teas, like your lemongrass tea and your same bay leaf tea, right? But outside ancestral practices, we know that deforestation also played a role, because Barbados being a small island, outside of the disease profile and ancestral influences, we also know that other factors that have impacted the use of plants could have been deforestation, because the lands were cleared primarily for sugarcane, and that itself would have affected quite a number of the species of plants which would have been utilized by the Amerindians, right? And also by the inhabitants of the island, during the time of slavery. The emphasis being on sugarcane, lands would have been cleared primarily for sugarcane. So I'm going to go over these slides very quickly, because this speaks to the actual medicine within the plants. So again, I point out that plants have these very important compounds called phytochemicals, and they're phyto because they are plant derived. We have found that the plant compounds that actually bring about the medicine in plants are actually the secondary metabolites. So these are not the metabolites which I differentiated earlier, but the secondary metabolites. And what are the plant compounds are we referring to? We're talking about the alkaloids, right? The polyphenols, the compound from the periwinkle plant that the principal mentioned earlier. It is an alkaloid, a vinca alkaloid. And within my science, we know that most of the bioactive compounds from the plants do indeed fall within that category. We also know that the polyphenols which produce the flavonoids are important, because those compounds tend to be anti-inflammatory, antioxidants, and everybody know about the carotenoids, right? Because they are also very popular antioxidants as well, right? So there is a lot of merit and medicine embedded within these plants just based on their chemical properties. So just to highlight vincristine here, the periwinkle plant, Professor Landis probably saw my slides before I presented. So I was going to highlight, Catharanthus roseus because of vincristine. There's another compound called vinblastine. And the other compounds here are just showing that from other plants, we have been able to identify medicine like morphine, that is given to manage severe pain in the hospital, came from a plant. And other anti-cancer compounds, artemisinin is a very important compound which actually comes from Artemisia annua, which is known to have anti-malarial effects. And during the midst of COVID, this compound was actually being promoted again, because it was said that it had some prophylactic activity against the COVID virus. So compounds from plants, or even synthesized compounds, they interact with different targets in the body to bring about biological activity. Hence, we speak about bioactivity. And this slide is just showing you the different targets in the body that can be attached to by these plant compounds. I think Professor Landis used a very fancy term. He spoke about agonists. So we say that compounds that bind to receptors and bring about effects are considered agonists. But we also do have compounds from plants and synthesized compounds that we know when they bind to specific biological targets, they prevent any response, and we call those antagonists. So drugs are either agonists or antagonists. And we get to the meaty and the fleshy section of the presentation. It's also close to the end, but I'm just showing here on slide some very important plants that have been captured over the years as being useful for their medicinal purposes in Barbados. You know, Cancer, Madagascar, periwinkle, right? We know that that has now moved from just being a plant-based compound to now being actually pharmaceutical agents. Cerci, right? Again, utilized for diabetes, hypertension, how you prepare your surfeit, tea of the leaves. People who have had cerci will tell you that this is probably one of the most bitter tasting thing they have ever had in their life, but it clearly and has shown to have produced some very important effect, because cerci is not only used in the Caribbean, but cerci is used all over the world, especially within, you know, Asia, right? In India in particular. And then we have other plants which are more synonymous with being Caribbean-based plants like duppy needles, Biden's pilosa, right? And the list goes on, right? Also, I'm identifying that we have been able to identify bioactive compounds within these plants, which have shown to bring about the bioactivity, which is consistent to the reported, you know, traditional healing practice. So these are just some photographs of some of those pictures. So the Madagascar periwinkle, it is the same garden plant that you have in your garden. You didn't know it had a medicine in it. Well, you know now, right? And here we have, you know, our cerci plant here being shown. The trumpet tree, again, a very popular plant in Barbados for medicinal purposes, as highlighted on the previous slide. But when I jump to this, the next couple slides, you will realize that I have quite a number of plants, which again here are more towards the management of what we call communicable diseases, which are your infectious conditions. And as I said, these have always been the more predominant forms of treatment, because during the 17th to the 19th century, this was primarily medicine practiced by the slaves and the cares of slaves towards managing the infectious conditions. This was a part of what built resilience and allowed the slaves to have survived those harsh centuries, you know, to be able to pass on this traditional information onto subsequent generations. So again, popular plants just based on the common names, physic nut, spider lily, milkweed. This is a very powerful plant. It's bacterial, fungal, and antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral, right? And again, I'm showing that we have bioactive constituents which have been found. And I want to speak a little bit more about milkweed. And I could also highlight Ricinus communis, which is your castor oil. This grows widely in Barbados. Once there's a gully or a roadside, you will find castor oil plants, right? And of course, everyone knows noni, right? Called dog dumpling, again, locally. And here the list goes on: cure for all, whitehead bush. These are all plants. And guess what? We have been able to identify specific active compounds from these plants, which show that they do have some medicinal effects. But I want to speak about milkweed, and I'm going to jump there very quickly. But again, for persons who just wanted to get a pictorial view of some of those plants, cure for all, milkweed. I'm going to speak about this guy here in a little bit more detail, right? Seed on the leaf, right? Your Christmas candle, Christmas is coming up, so that's a popular plant, right? And here, before I jump again back to milkweed, because milkweed ties in nicely with COVID. But here we have garlic and ginger. And as I pointed out before, garlic and ginger, those practices came in with our ancestors who were indentured servants, essentially, right? So this shows some level of us being, you know, well, what I call cultural syncretism, right? Which is the mixture of culture. So culture, what we consider Caribbean culture, is actually a bed of cultures mixed together. Now, one could say that in Barbados, we didn't have a lot of indentured servants, which is true, right? But in islands such as Trinidad, Jamaica, Guyana, right, there was a major influx. But guess what? Over the years, we know within the Caribbean with migration, cultures move along with people. So we have somehow adopted some of these very important practices. But in Madagascar, in Africa, right, there was this big talk about COVID organics, right? And I mentioned Artemisia earlier being an important plant because it wasn't only identified as anti-malarial, but they were able to see that it also could be used as a COVID prophylaxis measure. And this government, the government of Madagascar, made a very strong push towards having the WHO recognizing this prophylaxis product. But what we didn't know was that within that same COVID organics were other plants like milkweed, right? In some Caribbean territories, milkweed is also known as the asthma plant, right? And during the space of COVID, there was a lot of interest in this plant because extracts of these plants were being considered as a natural mechanism to combat against being infected by COVID, right? So again, we're sitting on treasures and we're sitting on medicinal means to treat ourselves against COVID. Now, don't tell anyone that I'm suggesting that we should be moving towards self-diagnosis and self-treatment. You should always have discussions with a clinician, right? Or someone who has the knowledge to advise appropriate and give appropriate information, because plants, like other drugs, synthesized drugs, do have adverse effects if used inappropriately, right? And all use of medicines, plants or conventional synthesized drugs should be managed with care. So this is where I'm going to wrap up because I know time is limited, but there's so much more to speak about. We could have had a discussion on how we could move plants to actual medicines, but that's a different discussion. Again, I just want to thank Confucius Institute, and I also want to thank the organizers of this particular forum for the openness to have this presentation. And hopefully this presentation would show that even though we are on different sides of the world, our traditional history, our traditional practices are still interwoven, and there are similarities for us to build on going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kohal, for that very interesting presentation. The words that you use, sitting on treasures, linger with me. Please, could you mute your microphone if you're not speaking? Sitting on treasures, I think, are the words that remain with me. And there's certainly a lot of work has been done already. And I would say perhaps it is not as well known to the public as could happen. But also there's a lot of work remaining to be done. I remember at my Confucius Institute training in Xiamen in 2018, we were exposed to a company that had a history of some hundreds of years in China in terms of using the traditional products in China for the purposes of healing and body care and a whole range of other items. I could also attest, Dr. Kohal, to the Cerasee. When you mentioned it, it brought to mind a different product, one called Buckley's, which, which had the award-winning ad that went, tastes awful, but it works.
But it works.
You can say that Cerasee, having been dosed with Cerasee on several occasions by my grandmother, that Cerasee tastes awful, but it works. So
it works. That's right.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And we look forward to that cooperation, continuing between the Faculty of Medical Sciences and the Chinese medical teams as they come through. Certainly in the area of traditional medicine and the use of herbs, there's probably a lot of room there for that kind of cooperation. So thank you very much for taking the time with us today. Before moving on to the next part of our program, I'd like to mention a few persons who have taken the time to be with us today, like Mr. Liu Ziliang also known as Bright, who is the lecturer in our minor in Chinese. I noticed a number of teachers and also admin staff from the Confucius Institute are here with us. John Dungs of the National Library Service. We have a very successful Learn Chinese Together program with the National Library Service. And I also see a good friend of mine from many, many years, Doreen Boyd, has joined us here this evening. Thank you very much for taking the time. To the next segment of the program. Now, you've been treated to insights into Chinese traditional medicine. You've been treated to insights into Barbadian and by extension Caribbean herbal remedies. And now we're going to look back at the traditional Chinese medicine, but with a slightly different twist, because we have our very own Dr. Che Corbin, who I believe is joined today by Miss Renata Ruitt. And these are both practitioners of traditional Chinese medicine in Barbados. And they, I know, are looking to see how they can broaden their cooperation in this area, which is expanded in Barbados. So over to you, Dr. Corbin, and to Renata Ruitt.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here with the medical team, with Dr. Cole, excellent presentation as always. Dr. Ran, always an inspiration learning with you. And I'm looking forward to more collaboration with the University of West Indies and our local practitioners as well. And as such, as I get ready to share a screen here, as such, we are right now putting together a group of us here in Barbados who are practicing traditional Chinese medicine. We realize, as we have seen here, especially in our presentations, the burden of chronic diseases continues to rise. Along with other diseases, we are now faced with battling. And traditional Chinese medicine very much presents an alternate route, an alternate avenue for the public, for individuals, and for doctors to manage and promote health, prevent disease. Traditional Chinese medicine, grounded in ancient techniques. The traditional of the Chinese medicine part is something whereby, as I learned my Chinese medicine in China at the Nanjing Chinese Medicine University, where in China they have formulated their traditional health practices into a cohesive package, which you can now study as in university format. And so I was able to study clinical Chinese medicine there in a setting whereby also individual clinics, but also large hospitals. Many countries across the world today, outside of China, in the EU, in the UK, in Canada, also methods like acupuncture have been integrated into the health system. Pain management clinics, physiotherapy clinics, and post-operative therapy. In Barbados, our health expenditure makes up 6.6% of our GDP. That's $334 million US. And there has been some reduction over a 6-year period I was able to find. And we believe that far more can be done. It was very encouraging to see Dr. Ran's success with the patient who was set to have a knee replacement, but now can use their own knees again. This saves a whole lot of money for the country, a whole lot of trouble for the patient who was able to use their own knees again. Acupuncture has been proven to reduce governmental health expenditure through its ability to significantly reduce emergency care and hospitalization. It has also been proven to successfully reduce the length of post-operative hospitalization following post-op acupuncture and Tuina techniques. Also, herbal formulas are used in conundrum with with post-op therapy to speed up recovery. Now, herbal practice is indeed a large part of Chinese medicine. But also there's a side of Chinese medicine which is concerned with health culture, prevention rather than cure, quality of life. And so traditional Chinese medicine focuses not only on the treatment of illnesses, but has a unique approach to preventing disease, prevention rather than cure, improving quality of life also while aging. And Barbados does have a population known for longevity. People need to age with grace and quality of life. Chinese medicine can complement the pharmaceutical system while lowering expenditure, but also it can change public perception of their own health. People can learn how to take care of their own health more effectively in knowing when to use what. And so, for example, many of the herbs which Dr. Kohal was also pointing out are also foods. When do you use what food for yourself or for your family for what kind of effect? Dr. Kohal, very interesting, also was pointing out that in times before, Barbados, the Caribbean, was mainly a tropical disease center. In these times, what I'm finding in Chinese medicine practice in Barbados is that, especially when summer months come on, you're no longer seeing tropical diseases, you're seeing cold diseases, like what you would see with in Zhang Zhongjing, one of the founders of Chinese medicine, whereby people are using lots of air conditioning and diminishing their
I think
quality of
Dr.
life.
George was before me. Yeah. For some reason, it's your hand, yeah. Sorry, Dr. Adams, I was not going to reiterate what Dr. Harvey and Dr. Connell and everybody else has said. I see Dr.
We here practicing Chinese medicine in Barbados have a vision for public health reform and to assist the creation of public health policy initiatives so that Barbadians can address future health challenges. We are pulling together a traditional Chinese medicine association, the Barbados Association of Traditional Chinese Medicine. Our vision for a healthier Barbados aims to create a public service focused on preventing ill health, reducing health inequalities and supporting the population to make a healthier lifestyle shift through the adoption of TCM practices, which Barbados health practices and Chinese health practices, they apply across the board. Human beings are human beings no matter where they are from. And so we believe, just as Dr. Kohal so clearly points out in his research, Barbadians and people in the Caribbean are very willing to use and are using herbal formulas and herbal methods to treat their health concerns, and so we believe that that willingness will extend to techniques like acupuncture, tuina, moxibustion, and on the exercise side of things like Tai Chi and Qigong, which have the capacity to reduce the reliance on medication. In Chinese medicine, there is a saying, 吃药三分毒. If it is a medication, there's going to be 30% of poison within it. And so the best medications are the food medications, and then even better, the exercise therapeutics. And so here at the Barbados Association of Traditional Chinese Medicine, which we are pulling together, I want to introduce two members. So specifically, Charisse Yearwood has done some much help for us in setting up. She graduated from Middlesex University in London with a Bachelor of Science in Traditional Chinese Medicine, first class honors, by the way, and continued to do public health as a master's at Imperial College London. Renata Roet, my co-president, she graduated from a four-year program in Traditional Chinese Medicine at the Canadian College of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine in Victoria, BC, Canada. And she is here with me today. She has been practicing in Barbados for longer than I have. And I'd like to give her a chance to share a few of her experiences right now as well. So, Dr. Roet, Renata.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, we are. Right, so as Dr. Corbin was just saying, I asked me that question, I'm like, is it really been that long? So I graduated in 2003. And I first started up working out of Brigade House Medical Center. I not met a whole lot of resistance at first. There was some apprehension from most of my patients. I didn't really know much about Chinese medicine. And I think that was a lot of the problem in the early years, is that most people were not inclined to think to use Chinese medicine in Barbados because they weren't very educated about it. But as knowledge has become much more readable through the internet, more and more people are learning more about traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture and its benefits. And Barbadians are, I would say, in the last 10 years have taken a greater interest in looking after their health and looking for alternate means to dealing with their health issues that might not otherwise be properly addressed to their satisfaction. And as science seeks to explain things and people then become more interested in using traditional Chinese medicine as a primary healthcare option. But I have been pretty much on my own here for a number of years because a lot of my colleagues, they come and go, just like Shay. He spent quite a number of years in China and then came back here for a little while and then went back. But I'm really happy that a few of us more have been sticking around to come together to form this association, because the aim of having this association in Barbados is to provide a community of practitioners and expand traditional Chinese medicine in Barbados as a recognized health practice. Now, I want to say that I have had a lot more patients, new patients in my practice. And still with COVID, you know, people are under a lot of stress. So I'm seeing a lot more mental health and stress related issues. But the type of things that Barbadians usually complain for, as is with a lot of people in the world, is aches and pains. So the majority of my patients, I do deal with musculoskeletal issues and generalized arthritis and osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. But a lot of other types of patients that come to me will have digestive issue complaints, insomnia, stress, women's health issues such as fibroids, endometriosis, fibromyalgia. Well, no, fibromyalgia not. Infertility as well. And then also have men's health issues with prostatitis and ED. So things like non-communicable diseases with diabetes and diabetic complications with neuropathy and poor circulation, and as well as hypertension. And then I also see other patients with common problems that they might go to their GP for, such as kidney stones. A lot of people wouldn't think that you could use Chinese medicine to help treat kidney stones, but you can. So there's been a lot more receptivity from Barbadians to use Chinese medicine and acupuncture in Barbados in the last 10 years. And I really hope that moving forward with the China medical team and the Confucius Institute, that we can really expand a community to provide resources for education to the public, as well as to practitioners who may want to open up a practice here, or even as we start to seek to expand things into the public health sector. I think
and also for other doctors, for doctors who are not doing Chinese medicine, to have an understanding of what Chinese medicine is and how it might help your patients, so you can refer to them. And on the herbal side of things, as Dr. Kohal clearly shows, people are using their herbs, whether you like it or not. One has to understand what they are so that one can integrate them with, or step aside them within whatever area of medicine that you're practicing. Thank you, Renata. And we here at the Association of Barbados Association of Traditional Chinese Medicine and Acupuncture very much appreciate the invite and attention of all here today. Thank you, Confucius Institute. Thank you, Principal Landis. Big thanks to the Chinese Embassy and the China medical team. Do get in touch with us. Here's our email. We're looking forward to events coming up and would love to collaborate and cooperate. So on the institutional side, yes, please get in touch with us. But anyone here watching who wants to get in touch for more information or to find a practitioner, do give us a shout as well.
Okay, thank you very much to Dr. Che Corbin and Dr. Roit for that very insightful presentation, telling us about how traditional Chinese medicine is at work here in Barbados and how you may access their services as needed. We've now completed the second part of our program today, and we will go on to the third part. But before doing that, I would like to recognize the presence of the participation of Dr. Monica Walton, principal of the Charles F. Broome School, who that school is one where we have been teaching Chinese language and culture, not for a very long time, but the takeoff has been very, very good there at the school. And also Zan and Sean McDowell, who have been very close supporters of the Confucius Institute over the years. Moving on to part 3 of the program today, we now move into the demonstrations. You may remember that the title is Presentation and Demonstration, or Presentations and Demonstrations. We now move into the demonstrations part, starting with, and forgive me for my pronunciation, Baduan Jin by the Chongqing Traditional Chinese Medicine Hospital will be the first. And I think I will just announce all of these at one time, and then they can just be played in sequence. Baduan Jin, first performance of Juquin by Wang Ji, Intangible Cultural Heritage Inheritor, then a demonstration of acupuncture. And those are the 3 demonstrations that we are going to have, and they can proceed one after the other. So over to the Chinese medical team for these demonstrations.
Okay, thank you all. Now, after a 1 hour's lecture, so let's have a relax. Let's enjoy the traditional exercise. First one, let's watch the 八段锦.
健身气功八段锦，预备式，左脚开步，与肩同宽，屈膝下蹲，掌抱腹前， 中正安舒，呼吸自然，心神宁静，一手单，两手托天理三焦，上托，下落，上托，下落，上托，下落，上托，下落，上托，下落，上托，左右开弓似射雕，搭腕，开弓，并步，搭腕，开弓，并步，搭腕，开弓，并步，搭腕，开弓，并步，搭腕，开弓，并步，搭腕，开弓，调理脾胃虚单举，上举，下落，上下落，上举，下落，上举，下落，上举，下落，上举，五劳七伤往后调，起身，后翘，转正，起身，后翘，转正，起身，后翘，转正，起身，后翘， 正，起身后脚，转正，起身后脚，摇头摆尾去心火，上托下按，右倾左旋，摇头摆尾，左倾右旋，摇头摆尾，右倾左旋，摇头摆尾，左倾右旋，摇头摆尾，右倾左旋，摇头摆尾，左倾右旋，摇头摆尾，上举，两手攀足顾肾腰，上举，下按，反穿磨月，攀足，上举，下按，反穿磨月，攀足，上举，下按，反穿磨月，攀足，上举，下按，反穿磨月，攀足，上举，下按，反穿磨月，攀足，上举，下按，反穿攀足，上举，攒拳入步增气力，攒拳入目，抓握，回收，攒拳入目，抓握，回收，攒拳入目，抓握，回收，攒拳入目，抓握，回收，攒拳入目，抓握，回收，攒拳入目，抓握，背后七颠百病消， 体种，颠足，体种，颠足，体种，颠足，体种，颠足，体种，颠足，体种，颠足，体种，收势。两掌合于腹前，体态安详，周身放松，呼吸均匀，气沉丹田。
Okay, that is the performance of the Ba Duanjing. Thanks for this four beautiful lady. They are they are my colleagues in China. We are coming from Chongqing Traditional Chinese Medicine Hospital. So the next part, we are going to enjoy the guqin. Maybe most of us are not so familiar with this kind of music instrument. Actually, the guqin is a very old instrument in China. We have a music therapy in our traditional medicine. So I hope we can watch this video and we can learn to know what is a guqin.
尊敬的各位来宾，大家好，我是王希，我是古琴艺术的非遗传承人，西南大学音乐学院古琴专业教师。我们中国自古被称为礼乐之邦，周代则以礼乐治理国家，而乐字在出土的商代甲骨文里面就是丝弦绑缚在木头上。古琴相传由神农氏创制，由面板和底板合成，面板用梧桐木或杉木，底板用紫木，在鹿角霜的灰胎上生漆，琴弦用蚕丝制成，所以在八音中属丝。在距今2000多年前，古琴就十分盛行。当时的诗歌总集《诗经》305篇，孔子皆弦而歌之。首篇《关雎》则以窈窕淑女，琴瑟友之，描写了男子对心爱的女子爱慕之情。《黄帝内经·阴阳异象大论篇》中说到五音与五脏的关系，五音宫商角徵羽对应五脏的脾肺肝心肾。阳明脉解篇第30诊断足阳明外的病症时，发现病人对木音恐惧，而听闻钟鼓声则不为所动。宋代的大文豪欧阳修在他的《宋阳宾序》里说，他曾经得了忧劳的病症，没有医治好，后来在朋友孙道兹那里学习了宫音的琴曲，时间一长，觉得很快乐，不知不觉病就好了，于是推荐他的朋友也弹琴。可见古琴能调理性情，有益于身心健康。接下来由我给大家演示一下古琴3种不同的音色。散音象征地，泛音象征天，暗音就是人。 弹琴的过程就是天地人交融。今天我为大家演奏的曲目叫做《平沙落雁》。《平沙落雁》这首曲子，据传为1300多年前的唐代诗人陈子昂所作，其曲谱记载于明代以来50多种琴谱中，600余年来广为流传，深受历代文人的喜爱。我弹的是琴学入门的谱子。琴曲描写了秋高气爽时，水边风静沙平，云层万里，雁群在空寂中盘旋顾盼，雁鸣声时隐时现。作者借此鸿鹄之远志，写一世之心胸也。
有像点起来。 Okay, that is the performance of the guqin. Maybe this sound is so simple, but when you play it, you will find how difficult it is. So the last performance, last demonstration is a traditional technique.
Okay, thanks. That's for all.
Okay, thank you very much to the medical team for that part of the activity this afternoon. And we now go to the section which is Q&A, question and answer. So at this point, you can feel free to present your questions. But before going to question and answer, I know that some of you must leave us. I'm not encouraging you to leave, but I know some have other commitments. And so I want to take this opportunity to thank those who participated. It's been a very, it's been a long evening, but a very interesting evening throughout. So those of you who have to leave us, thank you for joining, and Godspeed in your travels. And look forward to seeing you at the next presentation. Thank you very much to all. So now over to the question and answer section. Any questions for those who presented this afternoon? I know there are some questions already in the chat. Feel free to present your questions. I know there was one question here about, let me review the, I don't have to name the person, but they can say, I'm curious as to how Chinese medicine and further collaboration with the UWI-CH and wider community in tackling diabetes and help to reduce amputations. Question about further collaboration between those who are practitioners of Chinese medicine in the UWI-CH, with the UWI-CH and wider community in tackling diabetes and health to reduce amputations. You know, there's a very high incidence of diabetes. The experts will be able to give the statistics, very high incidence of diabetes here in Barbados and amputations also. So the question is about the applications of traditional Chinese medicine to dealing with the issue of diabetes and amputations.
I can chip in maybe.
Thank you, Principal.
So the wound healing process in diabetes is impaired at the level of a cell called the macrophage. And the pathways which I described for diabetic retinopathy are almost exactly parallel to the pathways for wound healing, where you require this transition from a particular kind of macrophage called an M1 macrophage into an M2. This process becomes disturbed in diabetes and it leads to retinopathy, and it also leads to diabetic wound healing. These herbal remedies that I spoke about earlier actually put that back into balance. So the same benefits that you would receive in diabetes from such herbal remedies, which I spoke about, would also benefit the wound healing process and restore it back to equilibrium. So I see, and I wrote on that. So I see the benefits there quite clearly.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Principal, for that. I see Dr. Colin Combach, who is the principal at the St. Stephen's School, has raised his hand. Dr. Combach, do you have a question or a comment?
Yes, please. No, I grew up here in Barbados on something called horehound. Whenever you got a cold, you got a stiff dose of horehound. That used to induce like vomiting that would bring all this thing off your stomach and what's not. My question always has been though with herbal medication is how can one determine the potency of the medication? Because I'm afraid of using too much and causing another problem, not using enough and not getting cured. And so I am curious about the potency that should be used. I guess it would depend on a lot of factors, like, but I am just curious about how that is determined.
Who would wish to tackle that question? I could tackle it as a layman and tell you, see a certified practitioner. And get some opinions about the about the effectiveness of what they offer. Maybe Dr. Kohal, you want to?
I saw Renata raise
Renee,
her hand. Yes.
Ms. Ruet, yes.
I could probably try and
Okay. Go ahead, please.
the way that Chinese herbs are prescribed. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, please.
Okay, right. The way that Chinese herbs are prescribed is based off of your pattern symptomology. So once a correct diagnosis has been made, we then know what herbs we're going to be using. And the herbs have a very specific dosage of the ones that we have been researched. I know that Horhung is something that probably doesn't have a medicated dosage that has been established. So we need to first figure out what the effective dosage would be. So that is how the Chinese herbs are prescribed, is based off of what the effective dosage is. And with some herbs, of course, depending on what it is you're trying to treat, the dosage may be higher or lower based on the symptoms that you're dealing with. So does that answer your question?
I guess to some extent it does, but I know that when my great grandmother used to mix this thing and put it in the fridge, I'm not sure she used to do any particular measurement or anything. She just used to get
No,
these
there wasn't any
together.
measurement. It was just slap it together and
Correct.
grab a handful of this and mix that. But to have an accurate therapeutic dosage, we first need to investigate into what properties and phytochemicals are in the herbs. I think Damien Kohol could probably speak to that with all of the research he's been doing of the plants in Barbados. That's basically find out what are the phytochemicals in the plants and then determine what dosage of those chemicals would have a therapeutic effect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ruet. I see a question from Dr. Walton, Monica Walton. She says, we have heard a lot about the non-communicable diseases here and worldwide. How effective is Chinese medicine in helping to control these non-communicable diseases such as hypertension, etc.? How effective is traditional Chinese medicine in helping to control these non-communicable diseases? Maybe from one of the medical team, how effective has the traditional Chinese medicine been in China? You can speak to that in control.
Yeah, as we mentioned, the hypertension in China, we do nowadays we found a lot of medicine have the function to lower down the hypertension, but actually, for traditional theory, we have a different theory for the explanation of hypertension. So usually we have to divide the hypertension into basically two types. One type is
hypertension.
Hypertension is higher, so that is one kind. And the other kind is the lower systolic hypertension. So usually for these two conditions, we use a different herbal medicine to control it. At present time, so we had a good clinic efficacy, but it depends on personal, because some of them even they even take the herbal medicine, but they cannot control the hypertension. Just at the very beginning, we have mentioned that the hypertension still are complicated even for traditional Chinese medicine. But part of them we can control it. Some of them can recover from this chronic disease. They don't need to use any medication in their life.
Okay, thank you very much, Junran. See, Dr. Damien Colehall has raised his hand. Dr. Colehall.
Thanks, David. I just wanted to weigh in on the question that was asked before the most previous question in terms of dosage and how was dosage derived for a lot of these traditional herbs and their uses. So this is what it boils down to, that traditional uses of plants or traditional practices in general would have been, quite numerous observations of specific practices, which were in an uncontrolled setting. So what happened over time was that inferences were able to be drawn based on a particular standardized approach towards the use of a specific amount of plant material for a given condition. This is somewhat different than approaches that we use now in conventional practices, where we develop randomized controlled trials, which are essentially clinical-based studies. Well, start with preclinical, then we move to clinical-based studies in controlled settings, where we're able to draw inference on a specific dose, being able to elicit a specific response. Now, guess what? Both sides of the coin were actually scientific, because our ancestors, what they actually did was they looked at repeated observations and then they draw inferences from such. It is just that their approach would have been considered in an uncontrolled setting. So the doses that they came up with, they weren't measured like how we measure doses in the conventional space or westernized medicine, but they will tell you that, oh, you should use 3 leaves of that plant, or you should use a given mass of that plant, and the plant should be dried before you do an infusion, and that you should do an infusion versus doing a decoction, because an infusion will be potentially less toxic or less problematic than doing a decoction. So it all boils back down to the science of the practice and the observations and the inferences that were drawn from the observations.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kohal. I will, of course, be guided by your advice, but I really do think I got too much Cerecy in my younger days. I think I was overdosed. And I think another question coming to you, Dr. Kohal, is breadfruit leaves are supposed to be useful for lowering, I guess, high blood pressure. Maybe could we have it as a powder? Is any thought, as far as you know, being given to having breadfruit, whatever the breadfruit leaves, powderized and available as a powder or something of that nature, or tablet form? Or maybe there's a wider question here: to what extent have we or are we looking in the Caribbean to transition between simply using the product straight from the plant and getting it into a more commercial version, if that's the right way to put it?
Yeah, well, all right. So let me take the first part of the question. So yes, I've heard about the use of breadfruit leaf for its hypotensive effect. I understand that a tea is made from the yellowed leaf, not the leaf not when the leaf is green, but when the leaf actually starts to change color into that yellowed form before it dries. And apparently it has been reported, but again, this is anecdotal evidence that it is extremely potent in its ability to reduce blood pressure. So I would actually suggest that persons who may be aware of this and are considering it, that this might be a plant-based preparation that you may want to seek some guidance on, by ensuring that if you're hypertensive and you're on other antihypertensive medicine, conventional forms of drugs, that you don't practice polypharmacy, which is the use of the breadfruit leaf tea along with your antihypertensive medication, because in trying to avert one problem, you can create another one by then becoming hypotensive, and that itself has a set of sequelae events which are associated with that. And the second question is, as it relates to what I call social inclusion, which is now being able to ensure that benefits that might be linked to a particular segment of society, because as I pointed out in my presentation, persons who are known to be using traditional herbal medicine in the Caribbean setting now are probably persons from the rural districts, persons who are not well educated because, well, not formally educated. Let me take that back. Not formally educated, or may just have a natural interest in that area. What we have is that a certain segment of society who has not really endowed themselves within that space, not getting the benefits of such plants. So if we now move to the co-modification of raw material, plant material into capsules, into powder forms, into actual pharmaceutical product, then some of those benefits then can have a wider reach in society. So that itself is social inclusion and ensuring that the benefits of these medicines are now spread right across the population.
Thank you, Dr. Kohal. Any other questions? Anyone else wishes to raise their hand or?
Yes, I want to ask another question. I mean, he answered.
One at a time. This is Dr. Cumberbatch.
Yes, please.
Yes, please, Dr. Cumberbatch.
He partially answered what I was going to ask because my question would have been along the lines of, you're dealing with herbs. So do we use them fresh, partially dried, fully dried?
Express beers.
How best? I guess it would vary with the type of herb too, because here at home I have the periwinkle, we got aloes, we have lemongrass, we have ginger, turmeric, bay leaf, and we tend to just use them as green as possible. Well, I have never used the periwinkle because I didn't know anything about that at all as a herb. So this was a learning experience for me. But when best would it be to use some of these herbs?
Right. So there's no set mechanism that is standardized right across all the herbs. But what I can, because you have different forms. So from plants you can make poultices. Poultices are generally made with the undried or raw plant material, right? And poultices are primarily for like topical applications. If you have skin-based infections, maybe the use of milkweed for ringworm. You make a poultice with the milky sap, right, and the plant material of milkweed, and you apply it directly on your skin. Then you have some herbs that you consume orally, and these are generally by tea. Now, for the teas, the plant materials are generally required to be dried, and the drying helps with the standardization process. And let me explain that. If you use the wet plant material to make the teas, then the moisture within the plant itself, you can't account for that in the standardization process. And in tropical climates, like what we have in the Caribbean, Barbados, primarily between the dry and wet season, the water content of the soil can impact the concentration of the chemicals in the plant material. So we generally suggest that you dry, and when you dry the plant material to make your teas, whether it's the dry or wet season, it doesn't matter. And you do an infusion, because the infusion doesn't make a concentrated tea as much as the decoction, which is the boiling of the plant material, right? So some persons will tell you, that you boil the material and the more material, the better. It doesn't really work like that. Consider that these compounds from these plants are essentially the compounds that have made pharmaceutical products. So the same caution that you take with pharmaceutical products in terms of dose limitations, you have to apply to the use of plants as well.
Okay, thank you.
David, you are mute.
My apologies. Renata Ruitt raised her hand, or was that the previous one from earlier?
No, that was a recent raising of the hand. So I just wanted to add on to what Damien was saying, and give an example with the herbs in Chinese medicine. And I'll use a simple one, which is commonly known as ginger. So we have fresh ginger is called shengjiang, and dry ginger is called ganjiang. And depending on what it is you're looking to do and the therapeutic effect, you either use the dry ginger or you use the fresh ginger. The dry ginger tends to be used more for warming with cold issues. It has a stronger effect with warming, and the Shengjiang is not as strong in warming, but it does have a more has a better effect towards causing perspiration, and is used more for external EPIs or wind cold applications. So it really depends on what it is you're trying to do that would determine whether you use the herb fresh or dried. It has their different applications.
Again, I'm muted. I noticed we are fast approaching the 3-hour mark, so I would think we would take one more question, and then we will try to wrap up the question segment and then move on to the closing. One more question then?
Yes, David, I have a question.
Okay.
I was wondering, what is the Chinese approach to the neurological conditions such as lupus, MS, so forth? How do they approach those conditions?
Okay, this one is for the Chinese medical team.
Yes, according to my experiences, I think the neurological disease is not so easy to treat it. Even for the MS, when I was in Barbados, so I have tried to treat 2 people with the diagnosis of MS, but I found I could not help more. Even for the pain, I cannot control it. So I should say I have no much experiences on that kind of disease.
Okay, and what about the Barbadian pharmacologist? Can he add anything to that? Or what has his been experienced with the neurological conditions?
So Alexander, could you translate something? Alexander, are you there? We have a overseas Chinese teacher, Alexander. Yeah, so you're able to translate?
Yes, please. Could you please repeat the question?
No, her question then now is going to, I think, Dr. Kohal.
Yes,
Yes.
the Barbadian pharmacologist.
Yes, right, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. And the question was if there are any local traditional approaches towards neurological conditions.
Yes.
Well, I might have a specific bias, and please permit me, but one of my postgraduate students is currently working on cannabinoids, right? Where we know that cannabis has shown to be quite effective at reducing infantile seizures. But what we weren't certain of is how does the extract, which is primarily a CDB-based product, CDB being one of the pharmacological active ingredients, cannabis, cannabidiol, how it works. And we have been able to show that specific interactions with these plant-based compounds in cannabis on specific receptors, cannabinoid receptors, can actually lead to some limiting of the activation of these epileptic seizures. So this is something that we're very keen on, and our potential lead currently is on cannabis.
Thank you, Dr. Kohal. I see Renata Ruitt would also like to weigh in on this one.
Right, so regarding neurological issues and how medicine can help, I haven't myself had too many neurologic patients, but I have had some. And typically when it comes to neurological issues, it falls under a category of phlegm and dampness and wind invasion. And you can use either Chinese herbs to address that, which basically unblocks the channels and eliminates the phlegm, or you can use acupuncture, which helps the brain stimulation and how the nerves are firing or misfiring to help the body function more correctly. And you had mentioned lupus. Lupus, if I recall, is partially an autoimmune disorder, which has a lot of inflammatory symptoms related to that. And that all comes back underneath the phlegm and dampness, which Chinese medicine using both herbs and acupuncture is actually it is very effective in treating those things. The access to the Chinese herbs may be a little bit limited, but using acupuncture certainly works just as well. And I've had some success with patients who've seen me for those issues.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rohit. I think the opportunities and the channels are open there. I would sign off at this point in time, but I would just like to leave one final thought before I hand over to Grace for the wrap up, the thank yous and the wrap up. I see coming out of this presentation, these presentations and the demonstrations this afternoon, a lot of possibilities for collaboration and further cooperation between the Chinese teams here with their knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine and the work that we have clearly been doing also under the leadership of persons like Dr. Kohal in Barbados and in other parts of the Caribbean on our own traditional remedies. I think if it has not been done already, a getting together of experts on both sides could be very beneficial. At that point in time, just a personal thank you for your kind attention to me this afternoon as I hand over to co-director at the Confucius Institute, Dr. Lee Rayon, also affectionately known as Grace, to give the thank you and the wrap up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Dear principal, distinguished guests, I know now it's almost 3 hours. So I would like to say, David, don't stop. Let this class continue till next day, till tomorrow, right? So very interesting topic. Thank you all for all the presenters. We had a very wonderful afternoon. Thank you all for also for the people who raised questions, and we have almost a half an hour discussion, very interesting one discussion. And you know, I as a layman, a lot of words trying to find their place in my brain, but nothing happened. Sometimes I just get what it is. Okay, so we as on behalf of co-director David Boulier and I, myself, and all our CI staff, we would like to say many thanks. So first of all, the thanks for all the presenters. So big applause for us to all to give them the presenters. Very wonderful. Thank you so much. And I know there's Dr. Koho Domin, Dr. Ranjin, Dr. Shi Kobin, and Dr. Renata Roy, right? So your presentation and demonstrations are very well delivered, and both on the academic and the part and the clinic part. And thank for the captain of the 5th medical team to Barbados, Miss Dr. Zhang. Your enthusiasm and actively function made this event possible. Thank you. And also, I would really want to say, stay for another year. Please. We just get everything started because COVID, we don't have a lot to do. So this just something like we just start, right? So yeah, so I really I think it's will be very great for you all to study, to stay for another year. That is the one. And also thanks the Ambassador Yin, also the embassy, your care about the event remarks and give us the support. Thank you, our principal, Professor Landis Clive. Your praise on CI give us more impulse to go forward, to move even further. And CI will try our best. On behalf of David, we would like to try our best to build a bridge, letting more cultural exchange things happen between China and the Barbadians as much as possible. We try our best. And thanks all our old friends and new friends here attending our lecture today, the CI Culture Club today. And those who had gone because they had other appointments, other things, and those people who are still here with us, thank you all. Your attending makes this event meaningful. Lastly, I think I would like to I hope all of you like me had a wonderful evening and enjoying it. And yeah, at last I should express, I wish all of us could learn from today's lecture and keep healthy and stay safe. Thank you. So I would make a suggestion. So everybody, if you like, you could open your camera and let us give a screenshot to have a great group picture, please.
Also mention, Grace, where the recording will be. How can it record be available? Those persons who want to review.
Okay, I have sent in the chat part to those people who want to have the recording. I think you could write to the email address I put on the chat and ask for the recording. We will send the recording to you, the link.
All right, good.
Thank you.
So open your cameras now and we will do a group photo.
Please.
Finish.
Done. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Principal, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for.
I have something. Yes. Yes. Good.
We will do this session again, or a session like this again.
Yes, true. Calligraphy, Tai Chi, 八段锦, 古琴 maybe. 古琴 is too difficult. So tune in our CI. We have more to deliver.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Early. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. 再见。
谢谢。
Thank you. Bye again.
Whereas we are at the point where we are seeing everyone out. We are like the hosts. We are the hosts, so we're seeing everyone safely to their car.
Okay.
Safe, Tony.
Thank you, David. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your holiday.
Okay. No, I will be working. I think you will keep me working. Goodbye, Tony.
You know me. Okay. Bye-bye. 再见.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Alex. Yeah, Alex. Yeah.